You'll all be shocked when you see the last part of the movie The Usual Suspects, where the film's climax delivers a profound twist. As Agent Kuyan reviews Kent's statements, he realizes that many details were fabricated, drawn from items within the interrogation room. Simultaneously, a faxed police sketch based on a survivor's description reveals a likeness to Kent. This revelation implies that verbal Kent himself is Keyser Söze, who had been deceiving the authorities throughout the investigation.
My guess is you'll never hear from him again.
Hello, true crime viewers. My name is Anton, and today, similar to the shock we felt when we first saw who Keyser Söze was, a whole family was shocked when they learned who the real person behind the mask of a loving and caring husband was. Stay with me as we dive into this gripping tale and prepare to be stunned by the truth that lies beneath the surface. Swathi Reddy and Sudhakar Reddy were married for 3 years and lived in Nagar Kurnool, a town in the southern state of Telangana in India, along with their son and daughter. The small family appeared happy, living a decent life in their town. Sudhakar was involved in business, running a stone-crushing unit and working as a contractor. This likely meant he had responsibilities and at times had to travel for work. Swathi was a nurse at a nearby hospital. Sudhakar's friends said he showered love on her. If his darling wife even sighed, he would sacrifice himself for her. She was the apple of his eye. His entire family doted on her. Swathi was also deeply devoted to her husband, and he was her whole world. Their life seemed to be moving smoothly, until one day, tragedy struck their family. On November 27, 2017, during broad daylight, 4 unknown men invaded their house and attacked Sudhakar by throwing acid on his face. Swathi was in the kitchen, and when she rushed to the living area where Sudhakar was sitting, she found him in agonizing pain as the 4 men fled the scene. Swathi immediately rushed Sudhakar to a nearby hospital. While he was out of immediate life-threatening danger, the severity of his burns required specialized treatment. The hospital referred them to another facility in Hyderabad, which specialized in treating acid burns and could perform the necessary plastic surgery for his face reconstruction. Swathi informed Sudhakar's family about the horrific incident, leaving both families in shock. They all rushed to the hospital, and the police were called to investigate what was now being treated as an attempted murder. Since Sudhakar was the only one who had seen the attackers and couldn't speak due to his injuries, the police questioned neighbors to gather any leads. However, no one had seen anything unusual, and the investigation quickly hit a dead end, leaving the perpetrators unidentified and at large. During Sudhakar's hospitalization, his family visited him multiple times, especially his mother and only brother. Sudhakar and his mother shared a close bond, and seeing her son in such a condition left her deeply distressed. Swathi, noticing her mother-in-law's deteriorating state, tried to console her. She urged her to get some rest, warning that she might fall ill if she didn't take care of herself. Swathi then convinced her brother-in-law to take their mother back to their hometown in Nagar Kurnool. Swathi assured them that she would take care of Sudhakar at the hospital and promised to bring him back home once he had recovered. Hearing Swathi's affectionate and caring words, Sudhakar's mother felt somewhat relieved and agreed to return to their hometown, trusting her daughter-in-law to look after her son. Days passed, and Sudhakar underwent facial surgery at the hospital. The doctors were able to partially restore his appearance, bringing back some semblance of his old face. Sudhakar's family had paid $500,000 Indian rupees for the procedure, a significant sum, but one they hoped would help him recover both physically and emotionally. When the news of the successful surgery reached Sudhakar's mother and brother, they rushed to the hospital to see him, bringing along his favorite mutton soup. However, upon seeing him for the first time after the surgery, his mother was struck by how different he looked. Though she had prepared herself for the changes, she still struggled to recognize her son. Despite her inner sadness, She masked her emotions, not wanting to upset Sudhakar further after all he had endured. She showed him the mutton soup, a dish he had loved since childhood, and served it on a plate with care. But to her surprise, Sudhakar blatantly refused it. This reaction left her puzzled and heartbroken, as it was a stark reminder of how much he had changed, not just physically, but emotionally as well. Sudhakar's mother was taken aback by his refusal, and though she tried again, he remained adamant about not having the soup. She decided not to push him further, but the incident left her deeply unsettled. She couldn't understand why he would reject something he had always loved. She remembered how, in his childhood, his face would light up whenever she served him mutton soup. Perhaps, she thought, this was part of the trauma from the acid attack or a newfound fear of hot liquids. After all, just a day before the attack, Sudhakar had slipped and fallen down the stairs at home, adding to his physical and emotional strain. Not wanting to disturb him further, she left the hospital with her other son, telling herself that Sudhakar was going through a lot and would eventually return to his normal self. But Sudhakar's brother saw things differently, and his suspicions grew stronger. This suspicion became the turning point in the case, leading to the revelation of a dark truth. He approached the Nagar Kurnool police and shared his concerns. The police, taking his suspicions seriously, launched an investigation to determine their validity. What they uncovered would shock everyone involved. Actually, after the birth of their second child, the couple's relationship began to deteriorate, especially for Swathi. While Sudhakar continued to love her deeply, Swathi's feelings for him had started to fade. Sudhakar noticed the distance growing between them, but chose to believe it was just a difficult phase in their marriage, one that would eventually pass. However, that didn't happen. Over time, Swathi's emotional detachment only increased, though Sudhakar remained optimistic, hoping things would improve. Around this time, Swathi began experiencing back pain due to the long hours of standing and walking during her shifts as a nurse. Concerned for her well-being, Sudhakar took the initiative to help her. He consulted a doctor who recommended physiotherapy as a treatment. This is how Swathi met Rajesh, a physiotherapist. Slowly, and through the regular therapy sessions, the two developed an illicit relationship. Rajesh was fully aware that Swathi was married to Sudhakar, and Swathi knew that if their affair were ever discovered, it would lead to public shame and humiliation. Yet, despite the risks, they continued their relationship in secret. Sudhakar remained unaware of his wife's extramarital affair, and, as he had always done, continued to love her unconditionally. He went out of his way to impress her, showering her with extra care, taking her out to eat, planning small vacations, and spending money on expensive gifts. Swathi, on the other hand, accepted these gestures while continuing to betray him behind his back. Over time, Swathi grew increasingly fed up with her marriage and began planning to elope with Rajesh, taking her children with her. However, both Swathi and Rajesh knew that if Sudhakar took the issue to court, they would likely lose custody of the children. This realization led them to devise a devious plan. Swathi drew inspiration from an Indian movie called Yavadu, in which the main character undergoes a face transplant to assume the identity of another person. Inspired by this, Swathi proposed a plan to Rajesh. They would first eliminate Sudhakar from their lives and from the world itself. Then, Rajesh would disguise himself as Sudhakar, taking on his identity in front of everyone around them. But how? Swathi proposed that Rajesh's face would be burned with acid, without endangering his life, and then undergo plastic surgery to make him look like Sudhakar. Rajesh was initially shocked by the plan. The idea of permanently transforming his face, enduring the pain of an acid attack, and risking a life sentence if caught was overwhelming. At first, he declined. However, Swathi was adamant, and through constant manipulation and pressure, she eventually convinced Rajesh to go along with the plan. By this point, Sudhakar's fate was all but sealed. As part of their scheme, Swathi began researching hospitals that offered facial surgery facilities. She personally visited these hospitals, inquiring about facial transplants and the associated costs. Once they had gathered the necessary information, the next step was to eliminate Sudhakar. On November 26, 2017, Swathi and Sudhakar were alone at their house when Rajesh arrived at their home from the back door without Sudhakar noticing. Together, Swathi and Rajesh attempted to strangle Sudhakar and hit him with a wooden log. However, their plan failed when one of Sudhakar's employees unexpectedly arrived at the house. Rajesh fled the scene before the employee could see him, while Swathi quickly shifted gears, pretending that Sudhakar had fallen down the stairs and needed to be rushed to the hospital. After receiving treatment, Sudhakar was released from the hospital the same day. Feeling a growing threat to his life, he asked one of his cousins to stay with him for the day. However, for reasons that remain unclear, Sudhakar chose not to reveal to anyone that he had been attacked by his wife and her boyfriend. Some speculate that Sudhakar's silence stemmed from his lingering optimism about their marriage. He may have believed he could still change Swathi's mind and restore their once happy life. Others suggest that he feared the consequences of exposing her actions, knowing that involving the police could lead to significant domestic conflict and social repercussions for Swathi. Whatever the reason, Sudhakar's decision to remain silent would have devastating consequences. But that decision would prove to be the worst and final one Sudhakar ever made. Fearing exposure, Swathi and Rajesh decided to complete the first phase of their plan the very next day. On November 27th, Swathi asked Arvind, Sudhakar's cousin, to leave the house, claiming she needed privacy for her family. As soon as he left, Swathi administered anesthesia to Sudhakar through an injection. She had purchased the anesthetic from a local doctor in Nagar Kurnool earlier that day. Once the anesthesia took effect, Sudhakar fell unconscious. With Sudhakar incapacitated, Swathi and Rajesh carried out their plan. They hit him on the head with an iron rod and a crowbar, and then smothered him with a pillow, ensuring he was dead this time. After confirming his death, they took steps to dispose of his remains. They moved Sudhakar's body into the boot of Rajesh's car and drove more than 40 miles to a forest in Nagpet. There, they burned his body and dragged the skeletal remains into the bushes, attempting to erase all traces of their crime. Immediately after disposing of the body, they moved to the next phase of their plan. Once they returned home, Swathi took the acid she had purchased earlier and began carefully applying it to Rajesh's face. She taped and wiped the acid with precision, ensuring no vital organs were damaged. After all, as a nurse, she knew how to carry out this horrifying act without causing life-threatening harm. Rajesh endured excruciating pain during the process, but his love for Swathi overpowered the agony he felt. This brutal step was a crucial part of their twisted plan to transform Rajesh into Sudhakar's double. After burning Rajesh's face, chest, and shoulder areas, Swathi rushed him to the hospital, claiming he was her husband Sudhakar, and that invaders had attacked him with acid. The plan seemed to be working until Rajesh made a critical mistake. Rajesh was a strict vegetarian, and when Sudhakar's mother offered him mutton soup, he reacted with visible anger and frustration, refusing the soup outright. This was unusual behavior for Sudhakar, who had always loved the dish. Additionally, Rajesh communicated only through sign language, even though doctors confirmed there was no damage to his vocal cords. He also failed to recognize relatives who visited the hospital, leading Swathi and Rajesh to claim he was suffering from memory loss due to the trauma. When the bandages were eventually removed, Sudhakar's relatives noticed that the man's face bore no resemblance to Sudhakar's. These inconsistencies, coupled with Rajesh's strange behavior, began to pile up in Sudhakar's brother's mind. He grew increasingly convinced that the man in the hospital bed was not his brother but an imposter. To confirm his suspicions, Sudhakar's brother asked a personal question from their childhood, one only Sudhakar would know the answer to. Rajesh, of course, failed to answer correctly. When Swathi intervened, telling him to leave Sudhakar alone to rest, it only deepened the brother's conviction that she was involved in something sinister. Sudhakar's brother then reached out to the police, sharing his suspicions about the man in the hospital. Once alerted, the police launched an investigation. They began questioning Swathi, who initially stuck to her fabricated story. However, under pressure, she grew nervous and started changing her statements, further raising red flags. The police also conducted fingerprint tests at the hospital, which revealed a glaring discrepancy. The prints did not match Sudhakar's, confirming that the man in the hospital bed was not him. With this evidence, and after intense interrogation, Swathi eventually broke down and confessed. She admitted to killing her husband with Rajesh's help and revealed that the person in the hospital was, in fact, Rajesh. Following Swathi's confession, she led the police to the spot where Sudhakar's body had been dumped. The police recovered his remains from the forest and seized key evidence, including the anesthetic used to drug Sudhakar, an iron rod, a pestle, a crowbar, and the car used to transport the body. Swathi was arrested on Sunday, December 10, 2017, while Rajesh was taken into custody on Thursday, December 14, 2017, after being discharged from the hospital. Both were produced in court and are currently facing trial. Swathi was granted bail by the court, but no one from her family came forward to post bail surety. Fearing public backlash and potential attacks, the police placed her in a women's shelter for her safety. Rajesh, however, was denied bail and remained in custody. In a dramatic turn, Swathi's father disowned her, performing mock funeral rites to signal to society that she was dead to the family. This act underscored the deep shame and betrayal felt by those closest to her. Both Swathi and Rajesh proved to be deeply flawed individuals, capable of carrying out such heinous crimes. Swathi had the option to divorce Sudhakar and start a new life with Rajesh, but instead, she chose a path of unimaginable cruelty. Her plan to kill Sudhakar and disguise Rajesh as her husband was driven by a desire to retain custody of her children and control over Sudhakar's wealth. Swathi meticulously coached Rajesh to mimic Sudhakar's behavior, how to walk, sit, and even speak like him. However, Rajesh's own mistake, refusing the mutton soup due to his vegetarianism, exposed their elaborate ruse. This seemingly small error became the crack that unraveled their entire plan, ultimately leading to their downfall. In the end, their greed, deceit, and inability to fully execute their scheme dug their own graves. This case is a stark reminder of how deeply trust can be betrayed, and how far some individuals will go to manipulate and deceive. Sudhakar's unwavering trust in Swathi, even as their relationship deteriorated, highlights the complexity of human emotions. On the one hand, his loyalty and optimism are commendable, but on the other, his inability to confront the reality of Swathi's actions ultimately cost him his life. Was it a mistake for Sudhakar not to back off from the marriage when he sensed Swathi's detachment? Hindsight makes it easy to say yes, but relationships are rarely black and white. Sudhakar's hope to salvage their marriage is understandable, but it also underscores the importance of recognizing when a relationship has turned toxic and taking steps to protect oneself. This case also raises questions about trust. Should one trust blindly, as Sudhakar did, or is it wiser to remain vigilant, even in the closest of relationships? While trust is the foundation of any bond, this tragic story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of ignoring red flags. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you think Sudhakar's trust was his fatal flaw, or was it his reluctance to let go of a failing marriage? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this case as intriguing as we did, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into true crime stories. Thank you for watching.